Hello and welcome to World Talks with me, Ashim Kumar. Ukraine and Russia have announced rival ceasefires ahead of Moscow's Victory Day parade on May the 9th, even as strikes intensify on both sides. Kyiv questions Moscow's motives, while President Volodymyr Zelenskyy seeks a broader diplomatic support during a visit to Bahrain. We're joined by Ukrainian Member of Parliament Andrii Osadchuk to explore all these issues. Mr. Osadchuk, welcome to TVP World. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here.
Good afternoon. A pleasure, sir. So let's start with the ceasefires. I mean, why is there a difference in the proposed dates for the ceasefire?
First of all, let's start from the understanding of what's going on, because I may assume that it is unprecedented in European history, or probably in world's history, when aggressor is asking for ceasefire, because otherwise they cannot conduct their so-called celebration. At the same time, I think we shall remember that just 4 years ago, Putin was planning to have a parade in Kyiv without asking anyone's permission, by violating all possible rules and traditions of international law, by destroying UN Charter. But you see that after 4 years, the picture dramatically changed. And in fact, they are looking for consent from Ukraine to conduct their almost religious entertainment. Our position is very, very simple. For the last almost year and a half, we're doing all our best to stop this bloodbath and to find the way for peace. And if you remember, the President Trump a year ago was saying that, first of all, the ceasefire shall be announced and then peace negotiations shall be conducted. But unfortunately, all these months, more than a year, Russia is continuing attacks on Ukraine. It's daily attacks. I just arrived from Dnipro, one of the largest cities in the center of Ukraine. I was there on Saturday, and missile exploded just 2 blocks from me, killing a student who was sleeping in his bed. So that's realities of Ukraine. But we don't want to create any conditions for celebration. We want to create conditions for peace. So that's why our answer to Kremlin is very simple. If you want a ceasefire, let's do it starting tomorrow. And Zelenskyy officially offered ceasefire starting noon tomorrow.
Yes, I mean, there's no doubt that President Zelenskyy has and the government, of course, Ukrainian government, has made every effort to enter into some kind of peace talks and subsequent negotiations, but that hasn't been well received. And it seems as though that despite the talks of a ceasefire, attacks on both sides have actually increased in intensity, with Russians in particular carrying out what are called double taps, which is they fire one missile, and then when the rescue services arrive, they fire the second to maximize the carnage. But going back to the original question, Mr. Osadchuk, what is it? I mean, what is Russia trying to say when it says, oh no, we don't want to start tomorrow, we want to start the 8th and the 9th. We want to do it, just for those 2 days.
Russia just want to say that they're afraid of Ukraine. After 4 years of big war, they're simply afraid of Ukraine. But I will correct you if you allow. I don't think that it's correct to say that both sides are increasing attacks. I think that the level of Russian attacks is more or less permanent for the last couple of years. All the winter, it was a nightmare here in Ukraine, and especially in Kyiv. Even in the center of Kyiv. We were sitting in our houses with minus 20, 25 outside without water and heating, and all that was a result of endless and permanent Russian attacks. But the truth is that despite all the Russian efforts, we were able to increase internal manufacturing of missiles, of long-range drones, as we call them, mid-strike and long-range strike drones. And yes, for the last 3 months, we dramatically increase the efficiency and accuracy of Ukrainian attacks on Russians' oil refinery, different military plants and factories. And yes, they're suffering a lot. That's why they're afraid to conduct parade without Ukrainian consent, because they know that after 4 years of war, we have military capabilities to attack them almost at any point of European territory of Russian Federation.
Understood. Now, a couple of things before we move on from the parade. The first is, of course, that this year the Kremlin is saying there's not going to be any military hardware on display, and we're going to have a couple of flyovers by some Russian Air Force planes, but that's about it. What do you think the reason behind that is? I mean, they're saying, of course, that Ukraine as a terrorist country will attack any military equipment. Is that the real reason, do you think?
Again, they're afraid of Ukraine. Secondly, they don't value their people, because if they see the risk, while they are ready to put people on the street, I mean military people. And don't forget that all Russian military is absolutely legitimate target for any Ukrainian military capabilities. But I think another side of this truth is that they have a big deficit of military equipment. I think majority of it, military equipment which they have, is somewhere around Ukraine or in temporary occupied territories of Ukraine. So they don't have much to show to outside world as they did before during years and decades. So that's why they're in very, very difficult situation.
Understood. Now, the other item I wanted to talk about was the offer by Russia to exchange some prisoners of war as a part of the truce deal. Your thoughts on that?
It's very important because since the beginning of this so-called dialogue between the United States, Russia, and Ukraine, which was started almost a year ago, a little bit more, starting probably February last year, it was understood that it was almost zero chances to reach any understandable peace deal. But the good side effect of these talks was more or less permanent prisoners exchange. And we consider the prisoners exchange as one of the most important target of all our diplomatic efforts, because we want all our boys and girls be back to Ukraine. So that's why we definitely welcome all and any efforts of everyone who is involved, including the United States of America, including our partners in Europe, who help us to reach from time to time an exchange agreements. So that's why if another exchange will happen, we'll definitely welcome that process. And again, for the last year, we were able to bring back home a couple of thousands of Ukrainian prisoners, and it was an amazingly good result.
Understood. I'd like to move on now to President Zelensky's visit to Bahrain. This is not his first visit to the Middle East in recent weeks. What was discussed with the King of Bahrain?
I was not with Zelensky. I'm not the part of his team traveling into the Middle East. But what I can confirm, even as an opposition deputy of Ukrainian parliament, that Ukraine and Zelensky is making huge progress in the dialogue with the Middle East. And I think we're using this momentum of U.S. war against Iran, and in fact, Iran back attack to countries of Gulf and in fact all Middle East. And we really demonstrate that using the language of Donald Trump, we have a lot of cards on our hands. And Ukrainian anti-drone capabilities, and especially anti-drone experience, which is absolutely unique in modern world, is definitely valued very much in the Middle East. And I think all our agreements which we've reached with Middle East kingdoms for the last, let's say, 1.5 months, has a dramatic importance for Ukraine, for Ukrainian position in the world. and I'm sure for strengthening of Ukraine military capabilities, because it's understood that it is mutually beneficial cooperation, which we're building with Middle East countries, which definitely will bring value to both sides. And again, coming back to the previous topic, the Qatar and other kingdoms there were helping a lot to Ukraine as being middlers in the dialogues with Russia on prisoners exchange. So their contribution is also very much welcome and respected.
Understood. Now, where does this leave the United States in this whole Middle East dynamic? It seems to have shifted a little bit away from them being the controlling authority in relations between the Middle East and the West. How do you see this evolving over time, Mr. Osadchuk?
Yes, for us, it was a problem because from one side, the attention of the world was changed from Ukraine to Middle East to Iran. From another side, that's true that for the last 1.5, 2 months, U.S. military was spending huge amount of military munition, and some of its types became a deficit, probably even for the United States of America, meaning that there is a threat of reducing of supply to Ukraine, which we receive through our partners in Europe by paying money to the United States of America. But from another side, I think still it's much bigger problem for U.S. administration and Donald Trump rather than for Ukraine. Because originally Trump was saying that it will take this magical 2-3 weeks to finish the war against Iran. Now he finished his 60 days terms, which is established by U.S. laws, which allow U.S. president to conduct warfare without consent from the Congress. But at the moment, we see no way out for Donald Trump. I mean, no option for good end of this military conflict, which definitely creates huge risks for everyone, for Poland, for Ukraine, for Europe, for everyone in this world, because we see that the oil prices is still on the level of $110, $115 per barrel. But I may assume that it may go higher and higher, which may create big problems for everyone. So that's why my expertise is simple, that Trump was very badly prepared for this operation, despite the fact that we in Ukraine, we welcome his attack against Iran, because for us, Iran is co-aggressor with Russia against Ukraine. But unfortunately, this story was prepared extremely badly. And for the moment, I don't see a good way out for Donald Trump. And unfortunately, I see a lot of risk for everyone in this world with further conflict going on.
Understood. Well, we will be watching closely, Mr. Osadchuk. Thank you very much indeed for your analysis. Have a good day, sir.
Thank you, sir.
That brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.